Welcome everyone, my name is Kevin. Today I'll be presenting the comparison between two of Samsung's most affordable Galaxy A series phones. This is the Samsung Galaxy A02s versus the Samsung Galaxy A12. I'm going to compare them against each other in terms of overall performance, speed, photo quality, and everything else that you'd want to know about a smartphone. By the end of the video, you're likely to be surprised about the results. We'll talk about the specs too, but more importantly, you'll find out if it's worth paying the extra money for the Galaxy A12 or if the A02s is enough to make you a happy buyer. These Galaxy A series phones share a lot of the same features at a glance. I'm talking about the same display size, storage speed, they both have the micro SD card slot thankfully, and the headphone jack too. Incredibly, Samsung has packed the A02s with a 5000 mAh battery. Now, that's the same capacity that's found in the Galaxy A12, and it's sure to get you through a whole day of use. I'll get to the battery details in just a bit. Since they're so similar from the front and can be easily confused for each other, I'm putting the more affordable A02s on the left side of your screen for the entirety of the video. Both displays are 6.5 inches in Samsung's Infinity V panel cut. Seeing as how the A02s is a lower tier device, you wouldn't expect it, but it actually has a slightly higher pixel density than the A12. The difference in person is imperceivable. What I have to say here is that I love the aspect ratio of both panels here, and for the price range, the colors are quite good too. They share the same placement of buttons on the right side, and on the bottom we have the loudspeakers with the headphone jacks. Those volume keys are clickier and better feeling on the A12, so is the power button. On this slightly more expensive phone, we do have a physical fingerprint scanner, and I really like this scanner. It's fast and accurate, but on the A02s, there's no physical biometric scanner. Instead, what we do have on both is actually the face-registered unlock. This makes me really happy because it's my preferred unlock biometric anyways. They're both sporting a matte finish on the back, so it won't pick up fingerprints and marks too easily. If I had to pick a favorite between the two phones in terms of the feel in the hand, it would go towards the A12. The slightly grippier and more textured back is nicer to hold in the hand in my opinion. Alright my friends, here is the rundown for packaging. Both have an adaptive fast charger in the box, USB Type-C to A cable, earbuds, and that SIM tool. It's awesome in my opinion that even the lowest end Samsung Galaxy A series phone ships with a wall adapter. Alright, let's talk about batteries now. So I already mentioned that both devices have a 5000 mAh cell inside of them. Here's how that looks in terms of the screen on times. On the A12, my screen time averaged to over 9 hours of use. On A02s, to my surprise, it wasn't quite as long, but the 8 hours and 30 minutes was my result, averaged out across several days. Now this is definitely enough to get you through a full day of use. My thoughts here on the battery life is that both phones have a very impressive battery readout, and already this far into the year, I've had my expectations for smartphone battery life raised by these two devices. Now let's talk about the speed performance of these Galaxies and how they compare. Specifications are still important to a lot of people on budget phones. The cheaper device of the two uses an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 450 processor, the 14nm chip. Now we've seen this chip before, with the same Adreno 506 graphics used in the Galaxy A20s. The Galaxy A12 on the other hand has a MediaTek Helio chip. Now the beauty of my channel not being sponsored or working with any brands is that I can be brutally honest with you about how I feel about these components and these brand manufacturers, and MediaTek is not one of those brands that I'm too fond of. They're not as proven as a company as Qualcomm, and the Helio chips just certainly aren't on par with Qualcomm Snapdragon. This being said, I'm still gonna let the speed test do the talking. Starting with the boot up of course, you'll see how these devices stack up against each other in tasks that you'd perform every day. The boot up win goes to the A12, but not by as much of a time difference that we saw in my previous phone comparison video. I closed all apps across both phones for accurate testing. The application load up test was a bit of a mix with the A02s on the left winning a few, notably Twitter loaded faster on the cheaper phone, and so did YouTube Music, but the A12 did generally win more often. For my browser test, I was pleased to see more consistent results with the A12 winning the load up time way more often than the A02s did. The MediaTek P35 chip inside of the A12 took the edge by a split second, or by such a small margin that ultimately I was actually more impressed with how Qualcomm's processors have held up, seeing as how this is not a new chip here being used in the A02s. Benchmarks were a necessary test in this circumstance. I did the Geekbench 5 test as usual in my phone comparison videos. Now the single core scores weren't worlds apart, but the multi-core score on the A12 actually has the MediaTek chip winning by quite a lot. I dug into the multi-core aspect of the benchmark, and what I found didn't really reflect what the speed tests showed just a moment before this. If anything, you should use this as an example of why benchmarks aren't really to be relied on solely. Speed tests are generally more important at the end of the day. Let's briefly mention software as well. Both phones are running Android 10 and the One UI skin version 2.5. Now personally, if you ask me, I think that both phones are going to get Android 11. It's just a matter of time. There is but one test left for us to do before we get into the final details. Let's get into that camera comparison. We've got an array of 3 lenses on the A02s and 4 lenses on the A12. Its main lens is 48 megapixels now with an aperture of f2. The other 3 lenses here are for the ultra-wide, macro, and the depth sensing lens. The A02s has a 13 megapixel main lens, the macro lens, and the depth sensing camera. Now the main camera's photos side by side reveal big differences in color tones. The A12 has a tendency to go blue on the hue. It's still closer to what the scenes look like at real life at Bronte Harbor. In terms of sharpness and dynamic range, I was amazed by the A02s's images. When you zoom in on these photos, you can obviously tell that the 48 megapixels of A12 captures more detail. This gives it the ability to have more digital zooming range, and that's a more usable aspect of the A12 camera. If your budget only currently allows for the A02s, I wouldn't worry too much. These are both usable devices for sharing pictures onto social media, and I'm content. After using the A02s for all this time and having taken these photos to put this camera comparison together, I'm honestly really excited to get to work on that A02s review. I wanted to mention that I am currently working on a video for the Galaxy S21, the A32 5G, and the Samsung Galaxy A42 5G. Loudspeakers were terrible on both of these phones. They're just atrocious. They can easily be covered up with a single finger, they're muffled and tinny, and if you're looking for a reason not to buy either of these two phones, it's going to be because of these speakers. Now, the A02s is actually worse than the A12, but by no means is the A12 going to get the pass in the speaker department from me. If you can get over this con and the fact that there's no IP rating or wireless charging, well then, welcome to the world of 2021 budget phones. I'll leave it up to you whether it's worth making the money savings and going with the A02s or shelling out the extra money for the A12. Thank you guys for watching this one. I'll talk to you soon, my friends. Bye for now.